All right, good morning. Good morning. Welcome to GIFA's overview of the Let Service Line program. I'm Lisa Golphin, one of the project managers here at GIFA, and we welcome everyone to our comprehensive overview of the Let Service Line program. We thank you for joining us this morning, to taking a little time out to learn more about the Let Service Line funding. I'm also joined by our Let Service Line team, Vince Harvey, who is here. We have James Fletcher, Brian Woodham is also on the call, and we have two new people to our Let Service Line team, Virginia Tom and Kevin Castro. So you'll be probably hearing from them in the upcoming months, so please welcome them with friendly smiles. So let's go over a little bit of the necessities of the engineering forum. This is an open discussion, and so you will be able to ask your questions as we present within the chat. As we receive your questions, we will then actually respond to your questions as issued to us. So we thank you, and we'll actually get started with today's overview of the Let Service Line program. Okay, so the overview for the agenda, first we will be talking about providing an understanding of the Let Service Line program requirements, speaking towards grants versus loans, and what happens next. A lot of you were awarded grants, and so we have received questions from you on what are the next steps and how to apply for that grant funding that you received. Additionally, how to apply for loans. So we'll cover that. We will then talk about Let Service Line frequently asked questions. The questions that you have posed to us, we'll go over some of those. In addition, if you have any questions for us, please feel free to put those in the chat and we'll address them as well. We'll finally go over our state environmental review process. EPD has been very kind to give us an expedited CERT process for Let Service Line inventory projects. And so we will go over the details of how that will happen. Then we'll have Vince Harvey, who will talk about grant and loan draw submission process. He'll go over the draw documents that will be required for your submittal to receive reimbursement, the draw payments and submission dates, debarment and procurement, and then finally heading up the charge will be James Fletcher, who will talk about the DWSRF federal requirements and inspections. He'll cover BABA requirements, AIS, DBE, Davis-Bacon and wage requirements, and finally the required project signage for bill projects. Okay, without further ado, we'll get started. So what projects are eligible for Let Service Line program? Any type of Let Service Line inventory projects, if you're having to go out and interview your customers, your employees, getting any type of statistical or predictive information that will allow you to be able to determine where those Let Service Lines are within your communities. Any type of Let Service Line replacement, whether you're having to replace from the meter side to the home or on the public side from the street to the meter, that is covered. And I'll go a little bit more detail about that later. Any type of site restoration, when you are actually replacing those service lines on customer-owned side, you may have to do a replacement of sod. You may have to incur any type of pavement cuts or additionally acquire any type of permit fees. Those are all reimbursable expenses. Non-routine sampling and temporary filter devices. Those are covered when you actually have to do additional sampling within school systems and daycares. Additionally, if you have to purchase any type of filter devices as a result of finding lead within those service lines, those devices are covered as well. And we highly encourage everyone to do some type of community engagement and public outreach effort. Getting ahead of your media is very important. Making sure that you connect with your communities and let them know what's going on, whether that is door hangers, to let people know when they're out working, letting them know that you are going to come to their property to do this specific purpose and replacing those Let Service Line within their personal property. Everyone has a camera, and so we want everyone to be safe during this process. If you happen to do any type of bill notifications, pulling bill inserts within your customers' bills, any type of notification letters, if you're having to conduct public forums for your stakeholders, all those type of events, if you're doing postcards or flyers, those expenditures are all reimbursable under this program. So we encourage you, highly encourage you to plan some type of community and public outreach effort to be able to get the word out on this lead service line compliance. A lot of our communities have reached out to us in regard to eligible equipment, devices, and piece of equipment. So we have actually provided a slide of 2 of the different devices and pieces of equipment that have been posed to us. You will be required to submit documentation to GFA on these pieces of equipment before you purchase them. So that way we can be aware of what you're intending. Vac trucks, that is not an eligible expense. But if you are wanting to do a portable vacuum excavator, Vermeer has a great, and some other manufacturers have a great vacuum excavator that's portable. As you can see in the picture here, it extracts the dirt on either side of the meter and allows you quick and easy access to be able to determine the pipe material and the classification of pipe on either side of the meter. Lead pipe detectors that allow you to determine where the service line is and if it's indeed lead. Those are all eligible expenses. However, you will need to make sure that you tell us the percentage of usage. For example, if you intend to do at least 30% of usage for these devices for your lead service line inventory, you will have to tell us that measure and we will cover up to 30%. We do not expect to cover 100% because, as you all know, when the inventory is over and you have to upload it by October 16, 2024, that piece of equipment or that device goes into your fleet. It goes to your normal operations. And so therefore 100% coverage will not be allowed under the lead service line funding, but we can allow up to a certain percentage. So you will need to tell us that percentage and then we can look forward to being able to reimburse you for that amount. So who are our eligible and ineligible borrowers? Eligible borrowers are any type of county or municipality, local water and sewer and sanitary districts, state and local authorities, boards, and political subdivisions created by the General Assembly. These are the entities who are eligible for the lead service line program and funding. Who are our ineligible borrowers? Communities or authorities that are deemed to be out of compliance with the Georgia Department of Community Affairs or the Georgia Department of Audits and Accounts. Now, if you are out of compliance with either of these entities, that kind of limits you under the federal requirements for being able to get federal funds from the lead service line. Once you become back into compliance with either of these agencies, then you are then eligible to receive the funding. So we want you to be aware and make sure you're reaching out to these 2 entities to make sure that you're in compliance so that way we can award you funding under that resource.
I have a question, Lisa.
Okay.
And I'll read it out.
Go ahead.
Some of these eligible funding uses are new to this individual. The question is, can we increase the amount of funding we ask for in the pre-application when we submit the funding application to cover these additional costs? So basically, their pre-app amount is going to be different from their actual application amount.
Okay, so right now we have the call for project or request for interest for FY23 pre-applications open. So right now we automatically assume that that is an estimate. So estimates are just that. It's not an actual cost, it's what your anticipated guess will be on that portion of money that you would spend for that. So if you're submitting the pre-application, that is based on an estimate. When you actually send in your application for the funding, we're going to need those numbers to reflect more of an actual cost of your project. So if your pre-app gave an estimate, that's fine. We're not going to hold you to that cost. A lot of the funding was based on the pre-application. And so if you were awarded a grant funding or either along with 100% principal forgiveness, you're only eligible for that amount. And we will talk about that a little bit later. But just to recap, if you submitted a pre-application cost, we're not going to hold you to that. But when you do submit the actual application to GFA for funding, we want those costs to be a little bit more actual and accurate. Great question. Okay, so let's talk about lead service line funding requirements. Any project receiving funding under this appropriation must adhere to federal requirements, such as State Environmental Review Process, otherwise known as the SERP, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, or DBE, Build American, Buy American, or BABA, and the Davis-Bacon Wage Act, American Iron and Steel, or AIS, and project signage. Any project funded under this appropriation will be subject to replacement of the entire lead service line. So that means the public side as well as the customer side, unless a portion has already been replaced or is concurrently being replaced under another funding source. So you will need to make sure that you tell us this information. If that line has already been replaced due to a previous renovation by the homeowner, or if that is being covered by another funding source. And you would tell us this information within your application process. So when we talk about the replacement of the entire service line, here it depicts a picture of the entire replacement. So if you can see from the water main to the meter, we could normally consider that the system-owned side. And from the meter to the home, that is the customer-owned side. Under the requirements of the lead service line program funding, you actually have to replace the entire portion of the service line in order to receive the funding. That is a federal requirement. That is not a GFA requirement. And so in order for you to receive that, the funding under the lead service line, you will have to replace the entire section. This is in accordance to Georgia EPD rules and regulations. They are the ones that will enforce this rule, not GFA. But we are their partners, and so the funding is applicable to this measure.
Question. For the SERP, does the project area include the entire water system service area? So I think they're saying like the whole.
For the SERP, for the SERP process, for the inventory, it would include the entire service line from the water meter to the main. Right now, I'm going to go over the SERP process. So hold that question, and then we'll go back a little bit into that process because we will review the SERP process a little bit more. I think it's actually coming up next. In a couple of slides, in 2 slides, we'll talk about the SERP process. So I'll go back to that question. But great question. Thank you. Principal forgiveness. Principal forgiveness funds are allocated to those projects that received a high score based on the pre-application scoring and ranking period. From February 14th through July 14th, that was our request for interest period for all pre-applications. We had over 250 applications to come in during that process. And so those applications were based upon and ranked based on affordability score of your communities. Under the SRF programs, principal forgiveness is awarded to disadvantaged communities, like I said, based on GFA's affordability criteria. A lot of individuals wanted to know what the criterions were for GFA's affordability, and so we have listed that here. These are the criterions that we use to base affordability. In-house, GFA has an affordability tool that was given to us by UNC, University of North Carolina Finance Center, and so we use that to be able to provide a great affordability score for communities. So we took that information and then we began to rank the communities based on affordability. I know some of our other programs are based on project readiness, emergency, and other different criterions of how you actually rank and prioritize the projects. But for the lead service line funding, we only base that on affordability because we're wanting to make sure that small and disadvantaged communities are receiving the funding because that's where the greatest need occurred.
Question, kind of going back to the definition of the service line. When you say replace entire service line, is this if it is entirely lead? What if it's just the homeowner side of the meter that is lead?
If it's just the homeowner side of the meter that's lead, you will have to replace the homeowner side according to EPD requirements. And we have a great webinar. If you go to gfa.ga.gov under our Water 101 webinars, it's a great resource where you can hear Mr. Manny Patel of the Drinking Water Division speak directly to this measure. The purpose of it, any lead service line has to be removed. So if the public side has already been removed, then you will actually have to identify that as a clarifier of that pipe that has been removed. You actually do field investigation and potholing. If the customer-owned side has not been removed, then you will have to remove the customer-owned side that is lead. For an inventory, you have to identify both sides of the meter, of the service line, the system-owned and the customer-owned. EPD is requiring that you identify what type of pipe material, and you have to provide field investigation, go out and pothole that, and provide proof via pictures or other measures that both sides are not lead.
And then if a single homeowner denies access to replace lead line on their portion of the property, is that still eligible? Is that line still eligible to be reimbursed, or would that also, and then as a follow-up, would that make the entire project ineligible for reimbursement, if that makes sense?
Yes, it makes sense. In accordance to the federal requirements, all the system will have to be removed. In order for you to get funding for that particular service line, EPD has a comment that if the customer refuses, then you can bypass that side and then come back to them later. But you have to make a wholehearted effort to be able and reach out and communicate with that homeowner. Under the lead service line funding, the entire portion has to be replaced. That is a federal requirement under. So to answer your question, in order to get reimbursement for that particular line, the entire section will have to be reimbursed. You can't do a portion.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so why should you consider GFA for your compliance needs? So FY22 allocation for lead service line funding was $66.8 million. Additionally, for FY23, which right now we are taking pre-applications for, we have roughly $28.7 million. So as you can see, there was a huge decrease in the amount of allotted funding between 22 and 23. And that was directly related to a drinking water needs survey that went out in 2021. Right now, GFA has partnered with Wood to actually revisit those need surveys. So you will, all the communities, I think it's roughly maybe 56 or 58 communities were contacted by Wood. We are now revisiting all of those communities to see and gather information on their inventories. And so you will be receiving communication from Wood on your inventory to get that cost. It's very important that you provide this information to Wood. Along with Wood, GFA may be contacting you for this information. The information that is derived from the needs survey gives an effort to increase the future allocations for years 24, 25, and 26. Under lead service line funding is a 5-year funding allocation. And so we're hoping that once we get the information from these communities, that we can increase our allocation to assist communities with this lead service line compliance deadline and to replace and do all the things they need for lead service line funding. But we need your help in getting the need survey information. So when Wood calls you, they send out the information, please, please, please answer the call and get the data back to them as needed. The lead service line funding is totally dedicated to assist communities with lead service line inventory and replacement projects. We cannot use that money for any other effort other than lead service line inventory and replacement projects. With that being said, 49% of the loan is based on principal forgiveness. So out of the 66.8 million, we have to give 49% towards principal forgiveness loans to eligible disadvantaged communities. The same for FY23. 49% of the $28.7 million will be given as principal forgivable loans to eligible disadvantaged communities. So how does the grant funding work for the GFA's lead service line? The grants are only for lead service line inventory projects only. You cannot use the grant funding awards that you were allocated to from GFA. And GFA actually awarded 204 communities grants. Roughly $18.7 million went out in grant funding to disadvantaged and small communities. But that can only be used for inventory projects only. If you are getting a loan you can use the loan for both inventory and replacement projects. GIFA has roughly $46 million in funding that can be used for low interest loans. So we urge everyone to take advantage of that opportunity. Communities who are eligible for the loan can potentially get principal forgiveness. So if you received a grant, say you received a grant in the amount of $100,000, and that was not enough, you need a loan, but you're also a small and disadvantaged community. Well, then your loan will also be eligible for principal forgiveness. On the diagram you see to the side, grants, we were allocated at $8.6 million, and then loans for 100% principal forgiveness was roughly $10 million for an overall cap of $18.7 million. We have a cap grant of the $46 million. So funding is available if you need it. If the grants were not enough, then please, please, please reach out to us. So we wanted to provide an example of how that will look, because a lot of people have called in and want to inquire. So the example is the city of Vince, Georgia has received a grant award of $50,000. However, the overall cost of the city's lead service line inventory is $100,000. So they have a deficit of $50,000. Additionally, the city engineer has proposed a cost of $500,000 in the next year's CIP budget for the replacement of all lead service lines within the city's distribution center for an overall total project cost of $600,000. So within the lead service line funding, the city of Vince, Georgia was given a $50,000 grant. However, that was not enough to complete the inventory. So the additional $50,000 that was needed for the inventory was then wrapped into a loan for the remaining inventory and replacement of those service lines for an overall loan of $550,000. So based on the affordability score, and the range can be anywhere from 90% to 0%. Principal forgiveness is determined after you submit your applications into GIFA. That goes to our finance department doing the actual, what's it called? When the finance department is doing underwriting. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So during the underwriting process, the finance department looks and determines what your principal forgiveness amount is. For this example, we use 85%. So the city of Vince application went to underwriting in our finance department, and they were given 85% principal forgiveness. So what did that look like? $50,000 in free grant money. And then out of the $550,000 loan, they were given 85% principal forgiveness for a total of $467,500. So they actually received, out of the $600,000 project, $517,500 was free funding with repayment of $82,500. This is how the lead service line program is working. So if you are needing additional money, the grants that you received is not enough money, funding is available for you in a low interest loan. We urge you to let us know if you need this low interest loan, so that way we can actually work to help you get the additional money you need.
2 questions. Can you explain the different buckets of grant money and how set-aside allocation fits in with the total amount available? Also, will set-asides continue to be available in future fiscal years?
Okay, so the first question, can you explain the different buckets of grant funding and how set-aside allocation fits in? Okay. So out of the first allocation, we received $66.8 million. And so the set-asides that you can use for that portion is roughly 31%. You get 2%, 4%, 6%, 2%, 4%, 10%, and 50% of set-asides. However, there are strongly federal requirements of how that those different percentages can work. For example, the 2% can only be used for technical assistance and to award assistance to small communities that are less than 10,000 in population. And so for our 2%, we actually had to look at all the applications that we received from communities that were less than 10,000 in population. That's how the 2% rolls. The 4%, you can use it for technical assistance and to award grants for any size system and community. So for the 4%, we use it for administration. We also use the 4% to contract with 120 Water. 120 Water is actually building a software inventory database that will allow all the communities to upload their inventories on October 16, 2024 electronically. In accordance with Georgia EPD, all utilities will have to upload that inventory electronically. And so we have actually partnered with 120 Water and Georgia EPD to build a software database where you can accomplish that effort. The remaining of that 4% was used for grants. The 10% can only be used for technical assistance. So in order for us to be able to use that to offer grants to small and disadvantaged communities, we had to move that over as a loan. And so that 10% was rolled over, roughly $10 million was rolled over into loans with 100% principal forgiveness. The remaining 15% was broken into two different areas. 10% could be used as grants, and the remaining 5% had to be, due to federal requirements, had to be rolled over as 100% principal forgiveness loans. So that was roughly like $3.3 million that went over into loans for 100% principal forgiveness. So that's how our set-asides for the Lead Service Line program was actually expensed to be able to offer and be good stewards of the federal funding that we have been given. We wanted to make sure that we gave a large portion of that money to small and disadvantaged communities, and we accomplished that effort.
And will that set-asides continue to be available in future fiscal years?
We can only speak to the set-asides can be used for technical assistance. GFA has been very gracious, and EPA has been very gracious to allow us the opportunity to use those as grants and free funding. I can only speak to FY23. We do have an effort to continue the grant program for Lead Service Line for FY23, and that will only be for inventory only. I do recognize that, after years 24, 25, and 26, that is when the majority of the need will come. And so if we can, we would definitely do so. But at this time, I cannot answer that question as far as the grants. I do know that for 24, 25, and 26, that is when majority of communities will be doing replacement. And the cost for inventory is nothing like the cost for replacement. Those are going to be maybe triple or, double the amount of inventory. So we do recognize that. And if we can, we will do our wholehearted best to be able to do so. But at this time, I cannot answer that question for future years.
Speaking of replacement, so they've submitted their application for funding for the inventory, but should they also submit an estimate replacement cost prior to the inventory being complete in order to get grants, loans with principal forgiveness?
Okay, so they submitted their application.
Right. So they're saying with inventory just getting started again.
Yes.
And the previous question they had said they had submitted it. Do they need to also estimate the replacement costs prior to the inventory being completed, basically to secure the most grants or loans with principal forgiveness? Like they're trying to be. Yeah,
you're trying to be proactive because you don't really know what's in the ground. And that's the unknown, is that we don't really know what's in the ground for replacement. Right now, that's the only thing you can do. Until your inventory is complete, you don't really know what is available. So, giving a wholehearted estimate of what that replacement cost is the only thing that you can do at this time, because we do recognize that, unfortunately, when you're dealing with pipes in the ground, it's an unknown. You don't know until you dig it up, and you can't know until you complete the inventory. So right now, the only best guess would be an estimate, unless you have any type of statistical or predictive information that will give you a more accurate guess. The estimate is the only thing that you can work on.
And then kind of going back a little bit, do you mind showing the source that you use to determine small and disadvantaged communities? Again, like what was your criteria? I think it's on one of the earlier slides.
So the criteria for GFA's affordability is a 10-point criterion that we use, and we actually have an in-house affordability tool that was provided to us by University of North Carolina Finance Center. It was actually them who built the affordability tool for GFA, and we use that affordability tool. I think it's the same tool that is used across the nation, but these are GFA's affordability criteria.
Perfect. And this might be kind of jumping ahead, but does the 120 water software replace the inventory template that was supposed to come out sometime this month?
Great question. So Georgia Environmental Protection Division, if you go to their drinking water page, they actually have a downloadable copy of their Excel spreadsheet. You will be required to use their copy of the Excel spreadsheet. If you alter the spreadsheet in any form or fashion, it will not allow you to upload it into the new software that 120 Water is designing. So we urge you, do not alter their Excel spreadsheet. Please use the one that is on their drinking water page. They also have a great 23-page best tips for inventory. We urge you to go to their drinking water page, and we can give that information to you later in the chat, but you will be able to get great information on the best tips that they're offering of how to complete the inventory, as well as be able to download the inventory Excel spreadsheet. Georgia EPD and 120 Water are actually going to be conducting a training course. And if you are attending the Georgia Real Water conference in October, they actually have a session where they will be doing some training. Additionally, we have a slide at the very end of our presentation that you can go and register. Additionally, at the GAWP, the Georgia Association of Water Professionals conference, in the fall in Athens, Georgia, they will be also doing a presentation there as well. So we urge you to actually stop by their booth, talk with them on how to register. It will be a mandatory requirement that you actually receive the registration training from 120 Water on how to upload your software, your inventory information into this new software. Okay, so now we're at the frequently asked questions. How do I receive a grant award from my community? So if you were given a grant award, which is on our intended use plan, you can easily see that information if you were and the amounts that you were awarded. You would definitely have to go to our website at gfa.ga.gov and be able to go to our application process. Once you go to gfa.ga.gov, easily go to water resources. Then from water resources, you go to the application process. And then when the application process, you'll be able to see the bipartisan infrastructure law lead service line grant application. That is where you need to go. If you're awarded a grant award from GFA, you must complete your grant application by September 29, 2023 by 5 p.m. That is how you get your award. My community did not receive a grant award. Can they reapply to the FY23 lead service line funding? All communities that applied for the FY22 funding but were not awarded within its allocation will be rolled over automatically into the FY23 lead service line IUP allocation. So if you applied in 22 but you were not awarded a grant, we would definitely be rolling you over into the FY23 for potential grant funding. If my community received a grant award within the FY22, can they reapply within FY23? Unfortunately, no. If a community was awarded within the FY22 grant allocation, they cannot apply within 23. We're trying to make sure that we give as much money to as much small and disadvantaged communities. And so unfortunately, we can't allow the double dipping of the grant funding. So that's a one-time grant award. Will the grant award be issued as a lump sum award to communities? No, the grant award will follow the same process as our current DWSRF and CWSRF programs. So what does that look like? That is reimbursements are made based on eligible invoices being submitted for incurred expenditures. The funding is retroactive. So if you have already completed your lead service line inventory project, you're eligible to receive reimbursement. If your project is ongoing right now and you have not submitted your pre-application, but you intend to, it's still eligible. If you have not started, then you're eligible. So it's a retroactive funding. So we're encouraging everyone to actually apply for lead service line funding to be reimbursed for this effort. How is the funding allocated to communities? Again, that funding was based solely on their affordability scores. Will there be any additional grant funding available within within the FY22 Let Service Line allocation? So all communities are required to complete their grant applications by September 29 by 5 p.m. If the grant awards are unclaimed after that deadline, GFA will be following program guidelines to reallocate the remaining grant funding to eligible communities. So we urge everyone who was awarded grant funding to actually submit their grant applications by September 29. If you have not, and we will be contacting you before that deadline because we're keeping and monitoring it. If you have not completed your grant application, you will get a call from GFA before September 29. If you choose to not to take it, then GFA will be reallocating and repurposing that funding. Under the federal guidelines for Let Service Line funding, all of the funding has to be utilized. And so we're doing our effort and best to be good stewards of that funding to make sure that the federal funding is being handled accordingly and properly. What is the deadline to apply for my community's FY22 Let Service Line Grant Award? September 29, 2023 by 5 p.m. What is the deadline to pre-apply for FY23, which is next year's funding, which you can receive a grant for? The deadline to pre-apply for that is also September 29, 2023 by 5 p.m. So that brings us to our next question. How will the state environmental review process be handled for Let Service Line program? The following diagram will provide guidance on the expedited CERP category exclusion process for Let Service Line inventory projects. We have worked very well with our partners at Georgia EPD, and they have been very, very helpful in allowing us an expedited CERP process that is less than 30 days. So what does that look like? So GFA will be reaching out to the communities to make sure we have a description of their project and also for them to complete the environmental certification form. Once we receive that information back, determine that describes their scope of work and the completed ECF form, environmental certification form, we then send that over to EPD for review. EPD reviews it. If the existing drinking water line project is applicable, a lot of questions came in on what is the existing drinking water line inventory project. That is your existing water distribution system. This process does not apply to new water line extensions. It does not apply to any other type of project other than inventory. EPD has made it very clear that this process can only be used for existing water lines that are in the system in which you are completing your inventory, the preparation, the determination of Let Service Lines. This process does not apply to any other project other than that. If they review your description and it's determined that you are applying for some other type of project, then they will deny it and it will follow the normal CE and NONSI process. And we have a flow chart for that. If they say yes and you're approved, then they will go ahead and approve your ECF and issue a categorical exclusion for your project. Your project will then be published on EPD's website as an approved project, and EPD will issue a final planning approval letter. That is how it's going to work for Let Service Line inventory projects. It's a simple and easy CERP process. They have also revised their ECF form that will solely speak to Let Service Line inventory projects only. No other type of project will be used for this form. Oh, okay, so my final thing is I want to share is for a lot of you that are wondering what is your project number. So we actually have all of the project numbers for all of the programs available. And so I want to kind of show you that information.
What you're looking at, we're seeing the team chart.
Okay. Okay, so as you can see, we have went ahead and provided all of the communities their own project number so that you can use on the SERP. So all the communities that were awarded funding have a project number that is associated with your project. So you can contact us. We'll actually put this on our website so that way you can easily have access to it. But all of the communities, all 204 of the communities that were awarded grants, we have went ahead and provide them a project number so that way they can put it on this CERT process. All right. Stop share. So I will stop my share now, and then I have to go back. And next up, we will have Mr. Vincent Harvey, who will talk about the GFAS lead service line drawdown process. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And I think I got us caught up on all the questions. So, oh, never mind. One just came in. But anyway, for the most part, let's see. And I'll go ahead and read it out. Okay. Let's see, because they're saying, just to clarify, if a community received an inventory grant for fiscal year 22 based off of an estimate for the work, and they have now determined it will cost more, or they would like to add some replacement component into their original submission, should that additional amount be included in the application being submitted by the 29th of September? It sounds like any additional funding above the grant would be a loan with principal forgiveness, correct? Or a loan with principal forgiveness.
Yes. So the two things will have to occur. They will have to submit the grant application for the amount that was awarded for the grant. But then they will additionally have to submit a loan application for the remaining portion of funding that they need to complete the inventory and whatever they have determined for their replacement. Mm-hmm. Once we receive that application, then we can send it over to the finance department for underwriting to determine the level of principal forgiveness. So that's how that will work. So two applications, one for the grant awards, that's the free money you're going to get. And then the second would be your loan application. So that way you can get and qualify for potential principal forgiveness for the loan or replacement.
Hopefully that makes sense.
Okay, one more question.
Yeah.
Would the SCP expedited process be able to apply for lead service line replacement projects, or is that for inventory projects only?
SERP
is only for inventory,
right?
EPD has made it very clear that this process is only for inventory. You will have to follow the standard process for replacement. And the mindset behind that is that for the inventory, it's no great environmental impact. Whereas the replacement will have significant environmental impact because you're having to dig up people's yards, and it's a little bit of difference. They see that as no other difference as if you were doing a meter installation project. It will follow the same guidelines as a meter replacement project.
That's a good way to look at it. Let's see. Per your discussion, a SERP is for the entire water system, not individual lines, correct?
Correct. It'll be for your entire inventory project.
Right.
For your entire, not for individual lines, it will be for your entire inventory project.
Yeah, one SERP for the entire scope.
Correct.
Is the easy way to look at it.
Does the engineer have to fill out any forms, or does GFA for the SERP? I noticed it said GFA sends to EPD.
So the engineer will have to provide us just the description and scope of work and what the project name would be. And they will have to sign the certification form. That's it. Just two pieces of equipment: description of the project, the name, of what the project's going to be, and then someone will have to sign the ECF form. Once you get those two documents back to us, then we send it on.
So if you have 1,000 replacements required, then you would need to complete 1,000.
No. The opposite. We're saying that. No. So let's say you have 1,000 replacements that you've identified. You would only submit one SERP for those 1,000 specific lines.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Because the project is per project.
Correct.
So the project is the inventory of 1,000 service lines.
Right.
So the SERP is based on project. Mm-hmm. The inventory project, not the number of service lines you have to replace.
Exactly. So I hopefully that makes and clarifies things. Any other questions? We are rocking. Sweet. Good questions. Good questions.
Great
Keep
questions.
them coming. All right. So now we will discuss the GFA drawdown and compliance portion of the forum. So once a community has executed an agreement with GFA, they can begin submitting draw requests to reimburse invoices received from the engineer as well as the contractor. There are 3 different loan types that I'm going to cover today, draw types that I will cover today. You have an engineering only, construction, and the final drawdown. I also want to make a note, and I said this with the previous forum too, that our policy on 30-day turnaround times for submitted draws, which means 30 days from when we receive it, and also that draws are to be submitted on the 15th and the 30th of each month only. I know in the past, I'm sure some of you have worked with us and we've been very loose and lean about trying to get draw submissions, but with all the bill money coming in, we want to make sure that we're turning around these draws to be dispersed to you accordingly and as quickly as possible. And that's just going to be the best way we can do it at this point in time. All right. Oh, so let's get into the first one. Everything okay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So engineering drawdowns. Engineering drawdowns are drawdowns that only contain invoices related to engineering services. These drawdowns require the following documents: the signed GFA drawdown form. And when I say signed, it means the community has signed the drawdown form, and the individuals that from the community that signed it were approved on the blue signature card that they sent to GFA. We also have the engineer's certification form signed by you, the engineer. And then we have the engineer's invoice for the scope of work that is performed. And again, I want to note, and you're going to hear me say this a million times, I'm sorry, but I just want to make sure it's clear that the submitted documentation must be put in these specific orders to avoid delays in draw processing, because these are the things that we're specifically looking for. And so now I'm actually going to show a quick example of an engineer drawdown. Was there a question I needed to answer? I saw the computer being moved.
So the question is,
what we got?
Since the CERP only addresses the inventory, has the construction, which is the actual replacement portion, has that CERP requirement been identified?
I want to say that's yes, right?
Yes, that's the typical CE non-Z, category exclusion non-Z, and we have a flow chart. That is the standard process.
Right.
So it will follow the standard CERP process, which includes, your cross cutters, having a public meeting, making sure, so that may extend longer than 30 days.
So you would, and I think maybe this is also what they're getting at. You're going to have to, let's say that it's from the inventory, you submitted your CERP for the scope perform, and you determined that there are lines that they're going to need to be replaced. When you're going back to do the replacement, you do have to submit a separate CERP that
Correct.
has to get that CE or non-Z determination.
That's correct.
Perfect. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah.
Good question. All right. Like I said, let me pull up an example of the engineer draw. Give me just a second. And then there we go. Stop share. I gotta go back to share. It is a rigmarole, I'm sorry. There we go. And then I can close that. Can you see me?
Yeah.
Perfect. So here is an example. I know we love to use the city events as our example, but here's what we call the drawdown form. So the emphasis that I was making on the community is the community will sign here. They're going to assign either 1, 2 individuals that need to sign it. So as long as they have actually reviewed and signed here, we're good to go. The form that we'll include in our lead service line program packet is already going to have like the drinking water SRF, since that's the only lead service line is in the drinking water program. So that'll already be clicked. And you will also have the contacts for Lisa, myself, James, Brian, as well as our general line, in case you have any follow-up questions regarding any sort of loan draw submissions. That's just what we call them. I know it can be a grant, but that's just our nomenclature. So you'll have the recipient here, in this case, it's the city events. You'll have the project number. You will have the draw request number, the date of the request. And in this case, they're only billing for engineering services. So you'll have your engineering service amount, $1,000 here, the total amount requested. And as we get into the DBE compliance portion of the presentation, you can also fill in here for all DBE expenditures applicable.
Time for a question?
Yeah, absolutely. What do we got?
Is procurement for engineering required, or since we have been helping along the way, the engineering under 100K fees is not required? Only procurement for contractor performing the inventory.
So that's a good question. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, James. So the qualifications-based selection process that they're referencing is applicable to all SRF programs, not even just lead service line. So if the intended amount expected on the inventory portion, because again, the inventory portion can be separate from the replacement portion, the engineering costs are expected to be over $100,000, then that community has to follow that qualifications-based selection process where they actually put out a request for qualifications. They receive bids from engineering firms. They go through and determine which firm best fits the scope of work that they're trying to do, and then continue on to the next portion. So yes, to answer your question, if the engineering cost is expected to be over 100,000, then you will have to follow, the community will have to follow the QBS process. Hopefully that helps that.
But if the fee is less than 100, no procurement?
That if the fee is no less than 100,000, and I want to say the construction portion is under $1 million.
Correct.
It has to be both. It's not or, it's and.
Okay, so from that, as I understand it, one cert for the inventory by expedited process, and then for the case by case replacement, it would be an individual cert for each address?
No. You're getting to it. You're getting too into your head.
Yes.
So one cert for the inventory, and then we will also be, we were trying to emphasize that you can't just use one cert for inventory and replacement. You'll be one cert for inventory, and then it will be one cert for the replacement. So the cert process for the inventory will be pretty quick. We've worked with EPD to come up with an expedited process for that. But to Lisa's point, think of it like if you were doing a AMR meter replacement, you're still going to have a scope of like a community, whether it's a city, county, whatever that customer size is, there's going to be one cert for that, and it's going to have to go either under like a categorical exclusion or a non-Z. So it will be two certs overall, one for inventory, one for replacement.
Perfect.
Is the potholing / excavation for inventory supposed to be billed through the engineer? I think I heard the different answer to this last meeting.
It is different. The way that GFA is defining engineering would be like, as far as like reviewing surveys, reviewing existing drawings, trying to determine areas and quantifying that, as well as I'm sure helping communities with the 120 water upload. But as far as like excavating, like if you're renting a hydrovac truck, more than likely the engineering firm itself isn't going to do that work. They're going to subcontract out that work. And so that subcontracted out work falls under the construction side of that specific loan or grant. And with that, you're going to have to follow our Exhibit C process for procuring that subcontractor. Hopefully that makes sense.
If we have an engineer for the year and this was done by QBS, may we use that company, or do we need to advise for a separate?
If we have an engineer, sorry, I'm having to reread it. If we have an engineer for this year,
yeah,
and this was done by QBS, can we continue to use that? I'm assuming engineer, or do you need to advertise for a separate qualifications-based selection?
It's for this project. I mean, so typically if some communities hire an engineer they have a master contract for an entire year.
Yeah.
But under the regulations of the loan, if the services, I'm not sure how you're doing the contract, whether it's going to be a task release under that master contract for a task release. If the contract for this work for your inventory is under $100,000, that's how we're looking at it. We're looking at the contract for your inventory project. So if you have an engineer basically under a master services agreement for the entire year, and you issue them various task agreements or contracts for different portions of work, we're going to want to see the task contract just specifically for inventory, your inventory project. And if that contract is under $100,000, that's what we're going to be looking at.
Cool. So question that just popped in my head, since that's a good point with master contracts. Let's say that their master contract kind of aligns up in a way that they've finished the inventory portion and they're ready to do their replacement portion.
That would be a separate task.
Okay.
It'll be a separate task agreement because that's different scopes. You have different scope of work.
Right.
So with the master service contract, it's just a master service contract. How they award the individual work will be through task agreements. So they develop a scope of work just for that specific task. So that specific task is just for inventory, then we look at that contract. The secondary piece of that will be a specific or another task agreement for just a replacement.
Perfect. Perfect. And then I saw a question about
unless they're getting a loan for inventory and replacement. So if you're doing,
if you already combined
if you're already combining it, so then we have to make sure that it's under $100,000.
So if you for the people that are going to try to combine it, they're still going to have to remember to do two different SERPs.
Correct.
So
that's correct.
Okay. And then I saw one question about what if no digging will occur? Again, that doesn't really fall under construction if no digging will occur. I'm assuming you're probably referencing like if you're going to do a survey or something like that. But the big question we're going to determine, and it's going to probably be case by case, and I definitely recommend as you're getting ready to bid out these scopes of work or you have questions on it, feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah.
But you are going to have to determine in some way, shape, or form if lead is in there and where it's specifically at, because it may not be in the whole pipe. It might be in one section because of one flange.
Additionally, EPD is going to require them to go out doing field investigation and potholing. So you're going to have to show pictures of where. So when you say that no digging is required, I'm not sure really how you're going to complete the inventory when Georgia EPD is requiring you to do field investigation and potholing to confirm your data.
Perfect.
So if you're not digging, I'm not sure how you're going to supply the reasonable information back to EPD.
Eloquently said. Thank you, Lisa. Did we get some more questions? Let's see.
The QBS process used to select the firm is in compliance with the procurement requirements, correct?
For engineers under and on.
For engineers under and on
but
call.
the QBS process used to select
it.
QBS process used to select.
I think, are they trying to reference back to the master contracts, or I'm not sure. That may be something we have to follow up on, because I'm not quite understanding the language.
Yeah, we're not really sure of your question. So if you put your contact information on the question was, but the QBS process used to select the firm is in compliance with the procurement requirements.
I do see it, yes. So I think they're going back to when you were discussing about the whole master agreement.
The whole master contract. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but if you want us to further have a conversation, just put your information, contact information, and we'll contact you more in depth about it.
Perfect, because I do want to keep this moving. Sorry about that, but
great questions.
Yeah, these are great questions. I don't want you to stop asking. I'm just going to keep us moving. So just going back to it, like I said, draw request form signed by the community, dollar amounts. Next will be the engineer's certification form. Again, this won't be on our website, this verbiage. I just wanted to highlight that this is required with every draw submission, period. Doesn't matter if it's engineering or construction, but drawdown form, engineer's certification form, and then of course your invoice. And I know in this case we use GFA Engineering, but they submitted their invoice. This is their This is their contract amount, the amount that they're requesting. Again, it talks about bill to the client, your community, as well as a breakdown of the services that were performed. And so how much the total is. Again, you don't have to follow this specific invoice. Obviously, it's dependent on how your organization is set up, but as long as it has that breakdown of who it's attention to, invoice number, scope of work, and then amount charged. That's the big thing.
I do like that invoice. It's really clean.
It's very clean, very easy to read.
Yeah,
you know exactly what you're looking at. And that's what we all want.
We welcome those.
So Vince, there's a question.
Absolutely.
Is this process just for lead service line?
No, this process is actually for all SRF programs. So that's base, supplemental, emerging contaminants, and of course, lead service line. This is the standard across all of GFA that we expect from all of you. And again, if you have questions on that, please follow up with us. But this is for all SRF projects. Good question. All right. Now let me get back to the presentation.
Absolutely. The question on the table, can we get a copy of the PDF or PowerPoint of the presentation? Additionally, the entire video recordings of both the Tuesday, August the 8th presentation, as well as today's engineers forum for August 18th will be on our website. But we would definitely download and put the PDFs of the PowerPoint on there as well.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so let's get into the construction draws. So as part of the SRF process, communities are required to solicit bids from contractors for the work performed. Once these bids have been tabulated and a contractor has been awarded and the Exhibit C requirements have been met, which we will go into in later slides, then the community may submit draw requests for construction invoices. So for these construction invoices, we require the following documents specifically in this order. So we have the signed GFA drawdown form that we went over, the engineer's certification form that's signed by you, the engineer. We're going to need the signed Davis-Bacon subrecipient compliance report, which we will go into that in the compliance portion, but just note it's just to make sure that the Davis-Bacon Wage Act is being met. We'll need the engineer's invoice if you have an applicable one with the breakdown of services performed. And then of course, the contractor's invoice, construction materials, and applicable certified payroll. Now that certified payroll kind of ties back into the Davis-Bacon Subrecipient Act that we will go into in the compliance portion. All right, so let's look at an example. I love examples. Any questions that have come in?
No.
Sweet. I just want to make sure. All right. So this is probably going to look very similar for a lot of it, but we'll still go through it. So again, first page is your GFA drawdown request form. Again, you have the community, the project number, the request number, and the date. Notice this time we do have engineering services that are being charged for, but we also have construction. So you'll have your engineering, construction, and then your total. Again, the community has signed it. You will have your second page, your engineer certification form. This is that Davis-Bacon subrecipient form that I was referencing. That'll also be, it can be signed by either the engineer as well as by the community. And then, of course, in this case, we have the engineer's invoice. And now we're actually getting into the contractor application. So for lead service line, we are specifically asking for it to follow the AIA format. So the G702, the G703, it just, we have been lenient in the past about receiving, you know, however the contractor wants to do it, but it becomes a lot of back and forth because we have trouble understanding what they mean, as well as a lot of the times they will change line items and dollar amounts. And it becomes, like I said, a long back and forth, and we don't want to do that. We want to really meet those 30-day turnarounds. So with that, we're using the AIA format. So in this case, the GC is Lisa, Brian, James and Sons LLC. I didn't know you guys started a GC business.
Thank you.
Get your money. That's right. That's right. So we have the project, we have the address of the project, the period 2, again, just the project number again, and then this is their breakdown of their contract. They happen to have a change order in this case. I see y'all. Contract sum to date, total completed and stored, retainage, all the way down to current payment due and balance to finish. And I'm sure this is familiar to a lot of people. Here's the G703, which actually breaks down their schedule of value. So in this case, it looks like this period they're charging for mobilization. Let's see, mobilization, a commercial mower. And then it looks like they also have some ductile iron pipe that they probably received, and it's stored materials here. And so we will actually need, for stored materials, we will need the backups like the bill of lading to show that the material has arrived, as well as photos if you can take them. So that ties, like I said, this ties all the way back into their cover page for their $900 current payment due. And then again, here's a good example of a bill of lading from, in this case, it's Bob in Maine. We can see the invoice date. We can see, okay, this is the total here, this to them, to this address. And that's really all we need from that. So let me go back to the slides. And again, please, if you have questions, keep them coming. Perfect. And then I go back here. All right. So that takes us through engineering only. That takes us through construction. So let's start getting into closeout and the final drawdown. So once construction has been completed and the project is in the closeout phase, there are several additional requirements needed for GFA to process the final drawdown request. It's not too much. So we're going to require a copy of the engineer certification. So from you that the work was completed in conformance with approved contract documents. We will need a copy of the contractor's final pay estimate, as well as their final release of lien for the project. And then we will also need the community to submit their certification that the project is complete and that there are no open or pending liens or claims on the project. So again, it'll be that normal, it will be the construction drawdown form, but then also those last 3 things as well included with it for us to be able to close out the project. And really, that's it from the drawdown side. We'll now get into the compliance side, and I'm actually going to turn it over to James Fletcher. Again, my name was Vincent Harvey. Thank you. And again, please keep those questions coming. We are here for you. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so there is a question.
Of course. I knew they wouldn't let me get out this easy. What do we got?
Questions. Can you apply for a loan with the anticipation of principal forgiveness, but upon underwriting concludes the community receives less than the anticipated principal forgiveness, remove their name from the loan and back out?
So you're saying that, I guess in this case, you've submitted a pre-application, it went through underwriting, you saw on our intended use plan that, hey, I know we had originally asked for this in the pre-application, but this is how much we're actually getting and grant forgiveness, and that's not enough to be able to complete the project. So can we now back out from that? Technically, yes, you absolutely can. The only hesitancy I would say with that, and it goes back to kind of Lisa's presentation, it's not all hope is lost if you're not getting the total grant amount that you want. You can also do a loan with principal forgiveness. I mean, you showed in that example with the city events how it went from like a $500,000 or $600,000 loan to only owing about 87 grand in repayment. So I don't want to say A, all hope is lost, but B, again, the inventory is a federal requirement that has to be done by October
16, 2024.
So it is a federal requirement. So it's a project that has to get done anyway. So we want to work with you on getting it done as well and easily as possible. So if there are concerns about that, please have the community or also reach out to us and we can see what we can do about that. Hopefully that helps.
All right. So no question.
Yeah.
How can we make sure we receive notification to participate in required 120 training? So we will actually have a link that way you can, they have a QR code, but we will actually have information on our website on how you can go and register with 120 Water. GRWA is also, Georgia Rural Water Association, is going to be sending out notifications. We've also passed it on to the Georgia Association of Water Professionals to pass on information to all communities in their newsletters. And if you just don't get it then, please call us. Just call us up. Our information is on the end of this presentation. Call us up and we'll be happy to forward you the registrational link for 120 Water to have you sign up. Again, those people or individual communities that are going to the annual fall conference for Georgia Association of Water Professionals in Athens, 120 Water will be there. If you are going to the GRWA fall conference in Unicoi, 120 Water will be there actually giving training. So those are other two avenues that you have direct contact with them.
But and you might be going into it in the future slides, but I know too that like as far as access to 120 Water itself, it flows from 120 Water to community, and then community can give it to the engineers that are working.
Correct. Oh yes, perfect question. So in accordance, once you have completed the mandatory training, 120 Water will then give you the access link to be able to upload your inventories. That will occur January 1 of 2024. If you're a community, you get that access link directly from 120 Water. If you are an engineer representing the community, you will have to contact your community to get the permission to be able to upload and go directly for that community's portal. 120 Water will not be giving the access link directly to engineers because it's a conflict of interest. According to Georgia Environmental Protection Division, this is a requirement for the communities, not to the engineers. So they want to make sure that all the communities are respective and aware of what's going on with their portals. So again, 120 Water, once you complete the mandatory training, they will give you the access links that on beginning of January 2024, the community will then have to give permission to the engineering firm. Perfect. To get access to upload the inventory.
Nice. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, James. All right. The seat is for you. You're gonna technically work.
Yeah.
All righty. Good morning, everyone. My name is James Fletcher. I'm the project manager 2 here at GFA, and I will be going over compliance and inventory. Now, we will discuss the FRS compliance portion of the form as part of the GFA SRF requirements. There are 3 compliance portions that need to be met in order to request disbursements. Qualifications based on selection for architectural and engineering services, Exhibit C for bidding and pre-construction services, DBE for contractor service, and BABA. Areas of this SRF compliance includes qualification-based selections, QBS, competitive procurement and architectural and engineering A&E services, Exhibit C requirements, bidding, pre-construction requirements as outlined in the executed agreement with the communities, the DB requirements, contract requirements as outlined in the GFA supplemental general conditions, Build America, Buy America, BABA requirements. QBS requirements. For an anticipated project cost greater than $1 million and A&E services are greater than $100K, then the 1-step or 2-step procurement is requirement. 1-step procurement, if the anticipated project cost is $1 million to $3 million and A&E services are more than $100,000. In a 1-step procurement, the borrower selects consultant based on the scoring methodology that has been published in a request for qualifications and A&E services. Step 2 procurement. If the anticipated project cost is more than $3 million and A&E services are more than $100,000. In a 2-step procurement, the borrower uses the scoring methodology published in his RFQ to narrow down the candidates to 3 to 5 finalist firms. The borrower interviews the finalist firm to select the most qualified candidate. Communities are required to submit QBS process to GFA in addition to acknowledgement in the application.
We have a question. So the question on the table is, we were proactive in partnering with 120 Water last year for building our inventory. Are there past and future invoices and eligible expense for allocated grant funds? And the question is yes. However, you will need to make sure that you understand the QBS process that is on the screen right now. For that one-step procurement, if the anticipated project cost is $1 million to $300,000 and A&E services are less than $100,000, then you can use them. If it's more than, then you have had to bid out the work. So we want to make sure that if you're using or looking at retroactive projects, you have to make sure that those retroactive projects where you've already started or you've already completed are in accordance with our guidelines for QBS processes, for federal requirements that James is speaking to. You have to make sure that they are eligible in order to get the grant fundings. If they are not eligible, then you cannot use those past invoices for reimbursement. Everything will have to be according to our current guidelines. What is the inventory requirement? Do we need to put pothole every number of feet? The inventory requirement, you would have to go to one of our Water 101 webinars, actually have Mr. Manny Patel and his requirements. Those are the requirements of Georgia EPD. Those are not applicable to GFA. And so that particular question will have to be answered by Georgia EPD. Our Water 101 webinar, if you go to gfa.ga.gov, then you'll be able to see that webinar from Mr. Manny Patel. We have, I think, 3 different webinars on there from Mr. Patel. And I know in one of those, or maybe both of them, he actually covers that question. Great question, though.
Good question, good question. Move it on, next slide. Exhibit C requirements. The following Exhibit C requirements must be met before construction funds can be dispersed. This is mirroring our SRF program. This is pretty much in line with anything doing with the drinking water, clean water. And those funds can be dispersed as proof of advertising, certified detailed bid tabs, engineers award recommendation, governor's body of award resolution, executed contract documents, including as-bid construction plans, specifications, and addenda, construction and payment schedules, contractors' written oath in accordance with OCGA 36-91-21 to the owner, summary of plans, on-site quality control provided by the owner/engineer with their qualifications of construction inspection, EPD plan and spec approval letter, bid performance and payment bonds, certificate of insurance. The same. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, before you move on too, I know that a lot of this stuff will come at probably separate times, like your proof of advertising, certified detailed bid tabulation, engineers award, and governing bodies award resolution will probably happen first or early on. And then of course you'll get into the contract documents, payment schedules, and summary of plans with notice to proceed later. But for us at GFA, I mean, keep in mind, I think even Lisa mentioned there's 200 and how many applicants?
204.
204. So it's hard for us to track all of these things as we have in the past, where they kind of get piecemealed sent to us. We recommend that when we have our pre-construction meeting, that you have it as like a giant, it doesn't have to be a physical binder, but just like a giant manual laid out in this order that details everything. That just makes it quicker for us, because we actually have to send you an approval letter to say, hey, you can now start billing for these construction invoices. Now, I very, 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 very recommend you get both a virtual, like a digital copy, as well as a physical copy, so that we can have both. But EPA is leaning more towards the digital era, and so are we. So again, if you can get it digital to us in this order, everything, we can also go through it with you if there's anything missing, and we'll have a full, complete list. It just, again, it
makes it very easy for us to put everything in the system and be able to track everything and make sure everything is signed and everything is where it needs to be.
Because keep in mind, the flow is usually GFA to community and engineer, and then community engineer to contractor. So we want to make sure we can get as much and everything as perfect and complete as possible. So we're not all sitting here going back and forth for 2 to 3 months on one item.
Because if something is not signed or not correct, then we can't move. We can't do anything.
And now that's slowing down your submission of payments for us to be able to be dispersed. So again, hopefully that clarifies a lot of things. Don't think that you have to piecemeal it to us. Just when we have our pre-construction meeting, we can go through all of this stuff. But we are happy and here to help you if you have questions throughout the whole process that you just need clarifications on to make sure you're following it the GFA way.
Man, I love my team members. Thanks, Vince. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
DB requirements. The following DB requirements must be met before construction funds can be dispersed. As I said before, similar to the SRF program, DB compliance GFA Form 4, DB compliance checklist GFA Form 6, certification by proposed prime contractor or subcontractor regarding equal employment opportunity GFA 9, certification by proposed prime contractor or subcontractor regarding debarment, suspension, or other responsible matters, GFA 10. The following DB requirements must be met with construction draw submissions. Standard labor interviews, SF 1445, required at start of construction and construction completion. Certified payroll required with each draw submission containing work performed. Davis-Bacon compliance report. Just want to make sure those are signed and completed in the totality, especially the top of the Davis-Bacon, because if they're not signed, filled out, we will not be able to move forward. So,
and I just want to highlight too, thank you, James, that all of these are on our website. As a matter of fact, the GFAs 4 through 10 are all part of the supplemental general conditions, which when you go in there too, you will also see, and Lisa wanted to make sure that we harp on this, we are trying to hit our 4% DBE requirements. So that's from—
which we will see it in a future slide.
Exactly. But I just want to harp on it now. Like, you can find all these forms here, but definitely trying to, with lead service line, hit that target goal of 4% between contractors, engineers, anything and everything we can, 4%. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Moving on, DB requirements continue. The following EEO requirements are recommended. The goals for minority and female participation expressed in percentage terms for the contractors workforce in each trade on all construction work in the covered area are 4%. They go that 4%. We need to meet that 4%. It's very, very, very important. Applicable to all contractors' construction work. The contractor shall not discriminate on the basis of race, color, national origin, or sex in performance of the contract. So very, very important stuff.
Yeah. We're looking for some DBE champions.
Yes.
So within lead service line, if you feel that you are a DBE champion and you're going to reach this 4%, now if you go beyond, then we definitely going to acknowledge that you are our DBE champion. So lead service line will be looking for some DBE champions within your projects.
And just to, again, go back to the supplemental general conditions, it does say, I want to say it's with the GFA 6, that you're supposed to show 6 good faith efforts of finding DBE, either prime contractors or subcontractors, with proven documentation that either the prime contractor or the subcontractor had reached out for DBE participation. That goes more than just saying, okay, we put the bid on our website and nobody went for it. No, we include links to, I think, GDOT and a few other places where you can actually find specific DBE contractors and subcontractors that we expect to have been reached out to. And we want to see call logs and emails to these DBE contractors and subcontractors as proof of the 6 faith good efforts that you guys tried.
Yeah. So there's a question.
Yes. Okay, I got it. Is it an eligible expense to pay a regional commission or consultant to track all of these admin requirements that engineers don't typically handle?
And the answer is yes. If the engineer is wanting to subcontract that work out to a regional commission or a consultant, to do so. It would fall under the QBS. Want to make sure it falls under QBS. But if the engineer wants to subcontract that work out, it's typical. It's the same that you would do for any of your geotechnical work or surveying work. You would incorporate those expenses within your engineered services contract to us. So when you are submitting those loan draws, you put those invoices for that particular service in the loan draw, but it is an eligible expense. Great question.
All right, moving on. Good question, Joel. Inspections. GFA will conduct periodic field inspections of a construction activities, placement, and store materials as necessary to verify the project is being constructed in accordance with industry standards. The loan agreement and approved plan specifications, special conditions, and change orders. Very, very important, stuff here. Inspection would generally be conducted quarterly, depending upon the complexity of the project and construction placement. Inspection reports would be prepared and distributed to the loan recipient and his engineer. Findings that are considered deficient during the inspection will be discussed with the loan recipient or its representative during the inspection. Correspondence will be transmitted to the loan recipient indicating areas of concern that requires a resolution. The most recent contractor's pay estimate will be reviewed during the specification, ensuring that the pay estimate accurately reflects the work in place and the materials stored. So these inspections will be ongoing things that will be happening. Very, very important things here. At the completion and final inspection will be conducted to confirm the completion of the approved project with the report with the required certifications of the project completion will be prepared by GFA for processing the final loan draw request for the project closeout. So inspections, anything else, Lisa, on inspections?
No, yes.
I mean, James highlighted the bulk of it. The only thing I would maybe add is even though we say quarterly, we're going to try to do more than that. But one of the things that we may be working with you guys on is also doing virtual inspections as well, not just on-site inspections. I mean, we can't really do that for the entirety of the project just because, again, we need to actually put our eyes and be on site to see what's going on, not just a doctored version of it. But we do want to work closely with you guys to make sure that we all stay in compliance and we can have a good and successful project through completion.
Absolutely.
Well said.
Thanks.
Next slide. Bill signage. The new signage, additional signage will be used for lead service line projects. This is the example of the signage used that will be required at all lead service line projects.
And Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is applicable to more than just lead service line, right?
That's correct. All of the bipartisan infrastructure law projects, that's lead service line, that is emerging contaminants. Anything that is under the receiving federal funding under the bill, bipartisan infrastructure law, will be applicable to this project signage. You will have to put this up. We've had questions of where do we put the sign for lead service line? Put it up at your headquarters, at your administrative building. We're gonna wanna see when we come out for inspections to make sure that you have this signage up. With it being a lead service line for your entire distribution system, there's no one place you could put it. So we recommend that you put it up in a visible area. Let it be your headquarters, let it be at your public works area, somewhere where we can actually see this sign, because we're gonna have to come out and take pictures when we perform inspection. And so you're gonna have it up.
And so somebody sent a follow-up question. Is this just for the replacement or construction portion, or will this signage be needed for inventory only projects as well?
Okay, so that's a great question. So I encourage you to put it up for your inventory. And then, because if you have an inventory where you have designated lead, then you're going to be required to put it up anyway. When you get ready, if you have lead, that is a subsequent replacement. So if you already have the sign up anyway, then you kill two birds with one stone. We're not going to come back and ask you to put up another sign if you already have it up for your inventory. So if you have inventory, you're going to be required to put it up. Subsequently, when you move on to your replacement, you already have a sign up.
Yeah, I think Lisa gave great examples. Like you can always put it up at the administrative building itself, as well as if you do have, let's say, a hydrovac truck or whatever you're also going to be using to do potholing, you can also stick it on the side of that. So that way it's following with you, because obviously your job site's going to be large, but from place to place, you will always have technically that signage up and posted where you guys are actively doing the work. Somebody asked.
He's going to talk to it.
Oh, go ahead.
No, it's any question?
The size requirements.
Size requirements.
Next slide. The Bible requirements. The following Bible requirements must be met before construction funds can be dispersed. Applicable to the purchase of devices / equipment for inventory portion of the project. Applicable to the permanent installation of materials during the inventory and replacement portion of the project. So Bible requirements is the bill, part of the bill funding requirements. So it has to be met within the contract. So this is the end portion for me. One of the things I took from this when I was in Alabama was the Office of the Inspector General. They really pushed hard on this, and there will be, as with anything that we do, looking closely and making sure that everything we're being good stewards of of the funding, and making sure that all the projects are being met in satisfactory conditions. So I thank you, and my name is James Fletcher again. I'm Project Manager 2 here at GFUD, and we will be moving forward with Lisa closing out. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, James. We're gonna kind of like swing over to Vince. I think he's gonna show, because there was a question about the size of the sign.
Yes.
And so Vince is gonna show you where to actually.
I can real fast. Yes.
The size requirements for the bill signage. Great question. Yeah, we've actually have a template size requirements that it's on our website, and this is going to show you how to get there.
It's actually just in our documents, which was interesting. Yep, perfect. So let me just share my screen real quick. There we go. Share. That's it. Perfect. So it can be, truthfully, if you just search either bipartisan infrastructure law or bill signage GFA, you will actually see that it is here in our documents. And when you click on it, it will actually already go ahead and download it for you. You must have done that wrong. Perfect. And then when you open it up, here it is. It has it in PDF format for you. So I know the template, I believe, is a 7 by 7 inches in dimensions. And then it talks about specifically, like depending on whether you want to go for a square or rectangular logo here and here. Yeah, that's 7 by 7. There we go. That makes more sense. And then they have just, I think we also included an example in the PowerPoint, but this is where your agency or the community logo will go. So in this case, we have another one, Gwinnett County, and it also tells you, hey, make sure that it's not too blurry or degraded or any white space and the edges not flush. So again, it goes through and it even tells you, how to make it in Adobe. We really went through it to make sure that it's as easy to follow and understandable as possible. So like I said, if you just literally type bill signage GFA, it will let you download it right then and there. So,
yeah. So there's a question. Could a community put a bill sign on their website where they're putting public information about the inventory process? Absolutely. But that is not the only resource that you're going to have to do. You, as a part of our inspection, will be required to actually have a physical sign up. You just can't put it on your website and let that suffice as having signage up about the bill, federal requirements. You actually have to have a physical sign put up on your property on site for this particular funding source and our other bill funding sources. So I hope that answers the question.
Perfect.
Okay.
At least I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I hope that we have answered your questions and that we have been very informative about the Lit Service Line funding, getting information out to you in a fairly easy and understandable way that everyone has been able to enjoy it. I know we've had a great time talking with all of you this morning. I want to bring your attention some upcoming events. On this week, they had a great webinar. IB Environmental touched base on tips on how to communicate with your customers about PFAS and lead. And we will actually have the recorded version of that forum available to you. On August the 9th, they actually had a great webinar on Lit Service Line strategies from the Great Lakes mission. So we will also have that up on our website. But next week, they have technical assistance opportunities from environmental finance centers. So I urge you to take inventory of that and actually join that webinar. It's free for all. It's a great resource for you to have additional knowledge and information on upcoming technical assistance opportunities from the environmental finance centers. And then rounding up the month of August, IB Environmental will have a Ask the Funders Forum. I think that we'll be on there for the Lit Service Line. We will also have some emerging contaminant questions. So everything you want to know about PFAS in your community, we'll have that, as well as a lot of other funders throughout the state of Georgia. So this is a great resource. If you're looking for availability on opportunities to have fundable money for your projects, this is a great resource that you can have to get knowledge about how to get that available funding from IB Environmental. Our partners over there, Stacy and Alana, do a great job. All right, and here is what we referenced before. This is the QR code that will allow you to get the virtual information for virtual training from 120 Water. If you scan the QR code, we also have a link here at the very bottom. And I think Vince is actually putting that information into the group chat, so that way you can go directly to their link. But this is how you register for 120 Water's virtual training for the Lit Service Line inventory database. Again, I can't stress enough that this is mandatory. October 16, 2024 is right around the corner. A lot of you have begun your inventories and we applaud you. Those have not started, we urge you to begin because with the inventory database, I've seen it. Every system will have their own individual portal. EPD has downloaded all of your service connections, so they know how many service connections you have in your system. You will be able to upload your information into the system. When October 17, 2024 come around, EPD will be able to run a report that will tell them who has actually uploaded their inventories and who has not. You do not want to be in non-compliance with Georgia EPD by not submitting your inventory. So we urge you to go ahead and start it. If you began it, we applaud you. If you complete it, absolutely, you're the best for us. And so we want you to make sure that you go in and register for this inventory training. They have some great little swag gifts for you for those who do apply per community, and some great knowledge on getting you the know-how and skills to be able to effectively upload your inventories. That's their little secondary page that talks about them. I know a lot of communities have already began to work with 120 Water on completing their inventory. So you're already ahead of the game, and they can definitely walk you through with being able to make sure you get registered. They did give some helpful tips on what you should do. Creating a living spreadsheet. One of the things that they talked about quite extensively is that your spreadsheet is a living document. Every time you upload information to your Excel spreadsheet and your inventory, it tracks and works as a living document. So when you actually upload your inventory on October 16th, it timestamps the data, and then it starts the clock for replacement. So from October 17th to July 1st, it'll give you the opportunity to actually upload your inventory and timestamp that information to be able to show where you are replacing your lead service lines. They urge you to conditionally continue to work on your Excel spreadsheet up until the time frame. Don't overwrite the data. When you add new records, it saves you time in doing so. Design your data set with your map in mind, because as you upload your inventory, it is actually also creating information for your transparency map. You will be able to, for each individual community, they will have their own transparency map that shows them within their communities where they've actually identified lead service lines, where you have identified unknowns, galvanized. It actually shows you on your own individual transparency map. So that the new portal will have that functionality to be able to have a transparency map for those who do not automatically have GIS or Esri accessibility. Plan for your inventory and your lead service line replacement plan. Make sure that it's visible to your community. Your community stakeholders are key to making sure that the information is out there on what you're doing and why you're doing it, that this is a federal mandate, because it's really not an option. It's not an option that you have to do it or do not do it. It's a requirement. Every public and private community will be made to do this by October 16, 2024. If there's lead anywhere, it's lead service line. Be prepared to replace on the spot if you're doing excavations. One of the things that EPD has determined that if it's lead and you actually uncover it or scrape the pipe, I think they're requiring you to make notifications of what if damages were done to go ahead and replace it on spot. Some of the toughest challenges, confirming non-lead where there are no detailed records or clear construction standards. We all understand that that's going to be a challenge to confirm that there's no lead. Individuals who are putting unknown, EPD considers that as lead. So if you're putting in your inventories and you're stating that it's an unknown, well, for them, it's just like you will have to routinely and do the adjustments to identify that until you know what type of pipe material it is. Unknown is not the final answer. Is there a question?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, that concludes our presentation. I hope it has been very insightful for everyone. We know we have thoroughly enjoyed it. And like I said, we want to especially thank Mandy from our PR department, who has worked extensively in making sure that we get all of our information out there, getting those wonderful registration links out to you guys. I think we had about 90 to 95 people on the call today. So we thank you for just taking the time to be with us this afternoon and this morning to talk about lead service line and getting the questions and answers out to you more efficiently. The August 8th is on our YouTube page, and we will also be posting the August 18th to our YouTube page as well as our website. So both of these resources, in addition to our PowerPoint presentations, will be on our website today. And we will also be doing some changes to our landing page to give you more information. 120 Water has provided some additional information on communications, some type of kit that can offer assistance to you in getting the word out to your constituents, to your customers. And so we're looking at putting that information, kind of like a one-stop shop on everything lead service line for you. So we hope that we have been informative, and we thank you for joining us today on GFA's Engineering Forum. All right, guys, is there anything else that I missed or you want to add?
No, you did perfect.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
All right, so our two new people, Virginia and Kelvin, you guys want to wave to the group so they can see? These are our new lead service line team members, so we're just excited to have them on board. And like I said, we will be hearing from them. And from GFA on our Engineering Forum, thank you for joining us with us today.